we are going to discuss about the overview of the Japanese literature. So, what's with the Japanese literature? Japanese literature examines works of literature such as stories, novels, poetry, and plays to research the workings of the human condition in Japan. Japanese literature throughout most of its history has been influenced by cultural contact with neighboring Asian literature, most notably China and its literature. Loyalty, obligation, and self-sacrifice compromised by human emotion and affected by elements of the supernatural are the major themes of classic Japanese literature. In Japan, they have their own writing system. Japan has mainly two types of writing system, the kanji and kana. The kanji, which are ideographs from the Chinese characters. The term kanji in Japanese literally means hand characters. It is spelled in Japanese by using the same characters as in traditional Chinese, and both refer to the character writing system known in Chinese as Hanzi. The second one is kana, which is a pair of syllables consists of hiragana and katakana. Hiragana, which means ordinary or simple, and it is used in native Japanese words. Hiragana is used for changing meanings of kanji by adding a hiragana character after the kanji. Hiragana is also used whenever kanji characters wouldn't be used. Hiragana can be used to express and write all Japanese words without the use of kanji, since hiragana is like an alphabet. And the katakana, which is a phonetic alphabet and was originally considered as man's writing. Katakana is also used for emphasis, especially on signs and advertisements. So now, let's move on to the history of the Japanese literature. There are 6 literary periods we will going to discuss. The first literary period is the ancient literature. So ancient literature was up until the year 794. During this period, they don't have their own writing systems, which leads to adapting the Chinese characters. During this period, the earliest works were created during the Nara period. In Japanese history, Nara period is the period in which the imperial government was at Nara, and Sinitation and Buddhism were most highly developed. Kojiki and Nihon Shoki are the examples during the Nara period. The earliest example of a story which involves time travel is the Urashima Taro.
Classical Japanese literature. So when we say classical Japanese literature, this usually refers to the literature produced during the Heian period. So some people consider this time a golden era of art and literature. An example of a greatest masterpiece of fiction from this time period is entitled The Tale of Genji, which is written by Murasaki Shikibu in early 11th century. So there are also other important works of this period includes the Koken Wakashu in 905, Waka Anthology, and also the Pillow Book in 990s. So next we will be going to talk about the medieval literature. This is during 13th century to 16th century. So one of the literature in this period is entitled The Tale of the Heike in 1371. This best represents the period of civil war and conflict in Japan. It is a story of the struggle between the Minamoto and Taira clans for control of Japan at the end of the 12th century. There are also other important tales of the period that includes Kamo no Komel's Hojoki in 1212 and Yoshida Kenko's Chorizurigosa in 1331.
Early modern modern literature and post-war literature. So first, let's focus on the early modern literature that is started during 1600s until 1868, and this literature was written during the Tokugawa period, also known as Edo period, and here are the some famous people who contributed first. Machu Basho, a famous for his 36 views of Mount Fuji, and Hokusai. These are the woodblocks prints and illustrated novels, and he also created Okono Husumeshi during 1702, and second, Hifin Aiko, Haiza Courage, a travelogue with comedy in it. So third, Kyukuti Bacon, who wrote a Chinese vernacular novel, Yu Mihon, inspired by Chuga. Taisho, Tikabi Ayatari, and Okajima Kansan, its popular people fantasy and his historical romance among other things. So and now, let's proceed to the post-war literature. During 1945 until 1990, and here are some people who contributed to this literature. First is Desai Usama, the writer of the novel The Setting Sun, which is all about the returning from Yoko Mishima, the writer of American Period, which is a short tale of depiction of a group of Japanese English teachers. And third is Tsudu Shishoko, who won the 1988 Naoki Prize for Refining Summer. So these works are often written with the ghost of the omnipresence of a war. So writers and artists needs to their cultures, what just happened, and how to proceed in what the lesson that we learn about their literature.
The Second World War has greatly influenced post-war Japanese literature. But soon, Japanese authors also started to deal with the problems of a modern society. Just like the Western authors, Japanese contemporary authors covers all about the genres and subjects, just like post-fiction, non-fiction, pure literature, and pulp novels. But despite of the influence of globalization, Japanese literature has managed to retain its distinct styles, as well as to remain a breeding ground of the new literary forms. The writing style can vary, but the main idea is to convey realistic characters and experiences. One of the best examples are the manga comic books, which is widely read by all ages, that includes a broad range of subjects like action-adventure, comedy, romance, and science fiction, which have also achieved a major success on the international book market. Japanese literature expresses multiple components of Japanese people. It expresses their gratitude towards traditions, their sympathy towards nature. Theater drama is literary genre that became favorite form of amusement. The popular plays are generally about history and tradition, or deal with the lives and adventures of gods and heroes. There are three types of drama that has been developed in Japan, namely the no play, the jururi play, or the puppet play, and the kabuki play. The first drama is a no play. No play is known as the oldest surviving form of Japanese theater. Legends say that no dance is invented by gods. It combines music, dance, acting to communicate Buddhist themes. No integrates mask, costumes, and the various props in a dance-based performance, requiring a highly trained actors and musicians. Let's come now to one of the Japanese traditional puppet play named bunraku or jururi play. It is a puppet play or adult theater wherein the dolls are beautifully made and lifelike in size. The stories featured in this play is usually based on historical events, folk tales about heroes, feudal wars, or love stories between the commoners in the Edo period. Most of the plays are tragedies, which is why many performances are only intended for an adult audience.
So, kabuki is made up of three kanji. Kanji means Chinese characters. Ka meaning sing, bu representing the dance, and the ki indicating the skills. So, in other words, kabuki means the art of sing and dance. The song here, it is performed by one or many singers, and it is usually accompanied by a shamisen, which is a type of Japanese lute, and other instruments are also used to create good sounds or sound effects, or acts as cues for the actors. And as for the dance, every action or performance, dance numbers are always inserted. However, kabuki acting is stylized. It is very different from the usual dance, and so the actors here are very trained to move and dance and use dance-like motions. And there are also performance techniques, and one of which is the tachimawari. It is a stage combat technique, and the fighting here, it can be a hand-to-hand, or the actors can use swords. Next is the roko, and the movement here stimulates the walking and running, and it is usually paired with upbeat drums. Next is ninjogori, and the act of one actor is controlled by another actor as if it is a puppeteer. The last one is the hikinuki. It is a specialized technique that involves changing one's costumes on stage, and it is perfectly timed with music. So the kabuki play or dance has 5 structure. The first act is the setup or the introduction of characters. Act 2 is the build-up, and the Act 3 is the primary action and the climax of the story before the resolution in Act 4 and Act 5. So, based from the structure of the kabuki, I think the Wano arc of One Piece, the anime, is one of the examples of it, although it is not performed in the stage, and Wano arc has currently have 3 acts pa siya. Next is the Japanese poetry. So, haiku is one of the most important forms of Japanese poetry, and haiku is a 17-syllable versed form consisting of 3 metrical units, the 575 syllables, and it is both a type of poetic poems and a way of experiencing the world. Next is the tanka. It is the oldest form of the poetry, and tanka has 31 syllables per poem. The 577 and the 575 here in tanka, it is called kaminoko or upper phrase, and the 77 is called chiminoko, which means lower phrase. So this ends my part and the ending of the Japanese literature. I hope you guys learned something. Arigatou gozaimasu.